Hi, it's Lipi. I'm a shamanic healer, and in today's video, I would like to talk a little bit about the myth that we can meet all our needs completely by ourselves. Now, when I say that it is a myth that we can meet all our needs completely by ourselves, I am not stating this myth as if it were a complete and undisputed fact, because how have I formulated that this is a myth? And the truth is, I have formulated that this is a myth because of what I have observed in my own experience, and also my intuitive understanding of this situation. So what I'm sharing with you in this video is not something that I have researched scientifically, or sort of tested on people, and in any kind of elaborate way. It's simply my experience with this idea, that the idea that's very popularly propagated by many spiritual teachers, by lifestyle coaches, by mystics, and that the power is within you, and everything is about self-responsibility, and it is up to you, and you yourself can meet all your needs. And in my experience, I have found that to be not true at all. And this idea that you can meet all your needs all by yourself, it's a well-meaning idea, because actually this idea is supposed to be very empowering. And in my experience, I have seen that unfortunately it means the intention behind the idea is wonderful, but instead of being empowering, it usually has the opposite effect, and that it tends to become very pressurizing and very disempowering. And we'll get into that in a couple of minutes to figure out why. Now, this is part one of a part two video. There's going to be another video that follows this, where I get into deeper details about how to meet your needs. But in this video, I'm going to focus on my experience with this idea of meeting all your needs by yourself, and how I have come to a very different conclusion about the way we should meet our needs. Now, before I get into why I think this is a myth, or why in my experience this has shown to be untrue for me, I would like to talk a little bit about how does this whole need business work. So from what I have been given to understand, and I have to share with you that you may or may not agree with my viewpoint. You may not believe that my experience is relevant to you, but I have been semi-researching this, not in a scientific research kind of way, but more in a curious, experimental, in real life observation kind of way. For 16 years, I have been spending a lot of time. I've spent a lot of time trying to understand how this and many other psychological phenomenon work. So I have a fair bit of experience with what I'm talking about, but of course it may resonate with you, in which case that's wonderful, and I think it's about time somebody said what I'm going to say. But if it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine as well, and you can check to see whether it's true in your own experience or not. Now, when we are children, when we are very, very young, ideally, in an ideal world, it mostly doesn't happen that way, but in an ideal world, our parents are supposed to be emotionally in tune with us, and they are supposed to meet not only our physiological needs, but they are supposed to also meet our emotional needs. And ideally, they need to create a very strong foundation for the child, the developing child, where the needs are like the little plants that are potted properly, are watered properly, get the right sunshine or shade or whatever it is they need. And in this way, when we grow into adulthood, we come into adulthood with a container that has been well filled, that has been well fed with the meeting of many of our physiological and psychological needs. Now, that doesn't mean that because our containers were well formed and well fed from childhood, that we won't have any needs left, because, well, if that was the case, then I wouldn't be making this video. We all know that we have needs, and most of us are not even aware of what many of our needs are, because they're so deeply hidden. But we all know that we have some needs, and even if our containers are already full, so if we're one of the few lucky percentage of people who had an upbringing where all these elements were taken care of, we will still have to water those containers. We will still have to meet our needs in our adult life as well. The only difference between people whose needs were not met when they were children, who did not get a chance to develop or form those containers, and the people who were, is that in one case, the people who were deprived may end up with huge energy holes. I've talked about energy holes in another video, and energy holes are a type of an emotional wound which usually occur when we have soul loss or are deprived of something in some way. And in that case, people who have these energy holes where their needs haven't been met, in that case their containers would be like these huge containers with holes in them. So that then becomes like a bottomless pit, and it leads to what is commonly known in common parlance as greed. I mean, we all know, and we've seen it in our own case, I'm sure, and we also know people where no matter how much you give them and no matter how much you try to fulfill their needs, it's not enough. It's like a bottomless pit that goes on and on and on and on. And if you see it within yourself, again, you may ask yourself the question and say, like, well, I'm doing everything I can to meet my needs, and however the needs seem like endless, and that's because you have energy holes, because you were deprived of getting these needs met in childhood. But even if you had those containers filled and you had that system in place, that doesn't mean that you will stop having needs. You will still need to maintain the containers. You still need to water those needs from time to time. So then the question is, well, how do you meet these needs? And coming back to what I was saying, the popular idea propagated by many coaches and gurus is that you have the power, it's all about self-responsibility, and you have to meet your needs by yourself. It's all up to you. Now, this idea that meeting your needs all by yourself is totally your baby, it's all your responsibility, 100%, is based on the idea that self-responsibility is empowering, it's power, and choice is power. And it's true, of course, self-responsibility and choice are power. But let me help you to understand a little bit about how we don't always have as much choice as we would like, or we don't always have as much self-responsibility or control as we would like. Now, this video is not meant to make you feel disempowered in any way. We are definitely going to get into the empowering bit. We're just going to shift a little bit about how we are looking at power and how we're looking at personal power and self-responsibility. So to understand how it is easy to get carried away with this idea that we're responsible for everything that happens to us, and we're responsible for whether our needs are met or not. Let's understand a little bit about how the subconscious works. Now, one of the things that the subconscious loves is rules. And if someone like an authority figure is powerful enough and impactful enough and gives you a rule to abide by, a life rule to live by, and you accept that, you're in your subconscious, you accept this because you really look up to this authority figure, or you are in a heightened state when you're exposed to this idea, your subconscious will pick that up as a rule and try to act on that. However, if that rule is based on a very weak footing, like you have a superficial rule or a superficial idea that sounds very exciting and very empowering because an authority figure told you so, but deep inside you don't have the foundation to hold that, you will put it into use very, very superficially, and the minute it is exposed to a life challenge, or life throws you a curve, or something that's very disruptive, it will fall to pieces. And here is a very good example of what I am talking about. So about 10 years ago, yes, it's exactly 10 years ago, I went to a seminar that it really did change my life. I mean, I had a huge breakthrough after the seminar. So I went to a motivation seminar which was conducted by a very well-known self-help leader, a thought leader, a motivation speaker, coach, etc. And one of my needs at that point of time, and it's still a need now, but it was I had a big energy hole with this one, was to feel more worthy. I needed to feel a higher level of self-worth, because for whatever reasons I had very low self-worth. And what I was trained to do in this seminar was to cancel out the negative belief of low self-worth by simply standing in the mirror or screaming and yelling, using my body up and down and screaming that this idea that I have low self-worth is complete bullshit, and scratching out the self-worth vinyl out of my brain, and then to put in high self-worth by then using my body again. So this seminar was onto something when they were talking about changing beliefs by tuning in not just to the brain but also the body. And the suggestion was to exercise vigorously or do some kind of physical activity while chanting affirmations of high self-worth. And I did that. I was like, okay, well, yeah, let me give this a try. And the seminar, we were put in such a heightened state with lots of music, and there were like thousands of people, and everybody was up and chanting, and it was a very high energy sort of an event. It was wonderful. I'm not gonna argue that it did bring me a breakthrough at that point of time for where I was. It was what I needed, and I'm very deeply grateful for that. However, I found that using this technique, my self-worth went up very, very temporarily and very, very superficially. And a couple of years down the line, when my new business basically fell to pieces and I was faced with crushing failure, and even worse, I was also faced with a very, very defeating financial situation because of the business collapsing and me being in debt from borrowing tons and tons of money to keep the business going. I suddenly found that my self-worth was back to square one. And I'm sorry, I had to question at that point of time. I had to question what happened, because I was like, well, I was doing this. I was told that this is what is going to take to make this need of fulfill this need of higher worthiness, to feel better about myself, to feel more like I deserve the things that I deserve. And what happened? And so that's one of the reasons I started questioning. I was like, well, what happened? there. And what I realized that happened was that the change that we tried to make was very, very superficial. It did not address my deeper wounds. It did not address the fact that I had huge energy holes when it came to self-worth. And it was only when I started working on those deeper wounds and deeper doing deeper energy work that I now had the same groundwork, the same containers that should have been installed when I was a child, but for whatever reasons didn't get installed, to be able to then hold on to the more sort of upper surface need fulfillment. Now, if this is true, so in my experience, coming back to what I was saying, if this is true that you can't meet all of your needs by yourself and you do need to look outside, then well, that's not a very comfortable thought either, because that's not very empowering either, because then it's like we're saying that, okay, so I have to depend on people from outside to meet my needs, and where I have no control over that, because what is the guarantee that they're going to give me what I need? There's nothing if they turn around and say no or are not happy about helping me to meet my needs, nothing I can do about it. And you're right, there's nothing you can do about it, because you can't control other people's behavior. So this is very disempowering, and as I said, this video is not about disempowering you, so I'm not trying to throw you off from that very empowering space. I'm not trying to make you feel like, well, the only way you can meet your needs is you got to look outside, and if you can't control that, well, too bad, honey, you just have to get out there with a begging bowl and do your thing. That's not what I mean either. I just want you to try and understand how this dynamic really works. So if it's disempowering to think that, well, we cannot control what's on the outside, and therefore, well, there's no guarantee of getting our needs met, so why even bother to look outside ourselves? The truth is that it's true that we have zero control over people outside of us. However, let me ask you a question. How much real control do we have even over ourselves? I think that if I ask most of you, give me a percentage of how much self-control you have. If you're really honest with me, you will admit that you don't have 100% control even over yourself. So then if we have to get all our needs met all by ourselves, we don't have control over even doing that by ourselves. Now, some of you may argue with me and say, no, I'm a very disciplined person, and I'm a very well-controlled person, and I have 100% control over myself. Let me tell you something. I suffer from complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I have managed to use the practice that I do, which is shamanic healing, and managed to heal a very large percentage of that, thank God, and I am very grateful for that opportunity. However, I still do have CPTSD, and I just have fewer symptoms now, but I still have symptoms. And one of the symptoms of CPTSD is panic attacks. Let me tell you something. If you are in the middle of a panic attack for some time, believe me, you have zero, all the self-control that you have is just going to go flying out the window at that point of time. If you suffer from mental illness, if you have depression, or if you have other mental illnesses or even physiological illnesses, at that point of time, your self-control can either go really, really low, or in some cases completely out of the window. So this idea that we always have self-control is as erroneous as this idea that we have no control over the people outside of us, and therefore we should only get our needs met from ourselves, because we can control that, but we can't control getting our needs met from the outside, because that's not true either. Yeah? If for example my need is to feel, one of my needs is to feel more worthy, or say I want to feel higher self-esteem, say one of my needs is to feel better about myself, and I'm sitting there with severe depression, or I've just come out of the hospital. I'm just checking on the time because I have been going on for a while and I don't want to make this into a very long video. And okay, we're 20 minutes into the video, so I still have some time, and try to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes. So coming back to what I was saying, if I've lost my train of thought. Sorry. If I don't have as much self-control as I would like, or I think that I have, then where is my power? I mean, this is totally disempowering. Now you must be thinking like, oh my God, this is not empowering at all. And this is where how you view power comes into the picture, because true power starts with honesty. And true power is not about ignoring your humanness or trying to play God or trying to be God. Now, let me clarify here that I strongly, and I do believe this, I practice shamanism, and I do believe that we are pure consciousness. The building block of us and what flows through us is pure consciousness. And I do believe that we are gods, all of us, powerful gods, having a spiritual experience. We're having a spiritual experience also, yes. But we're having a human experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. I really believe that. However, I think that many spiritualists and New Age gurus and mystics forget that we are having a human experience, which means that true power would be embracing our humanity, embracing that we have two realities that completely contradict each other but exist simultaneously. And that is that on an absolute level, we are pure consciousness, we are God, we are we are what we seek, there is oneness. And then on the other hand, we are also in this human form and experiencing human limitation. And accepting that, embracing the human limitation, not trying to gloss over it, not trying to run away from it, not trying to bypass it by becoming ungrounded and living in your higher chakras all the time, is where our true power lies. So how does this then translate into meeting your needs? Well, here I would like to introduce to you the principle of interdependence. So I just want to share with you that I've always considered myself a very independent person, and I love free spirit. I love standing on my own feet and being independent. However, this was another thing I noticed in all my years, is that while there is independence, and independence is great, and standing on your own feet is much better than depending on other people, the universe works on interdependence, which means that all of us in some way are supporting or enabling another. And if we understand this principle of interdependence, we then can embrace the fact that sometimes, a lot of the time, we're going to be able to meet our own needs, no problem. But a lot of the time also, there will be times when we're out of control, when we're not in a condition to take care of ourselves in the way we would like. And also in many cases where we're doing perfectly fine, there's nothing wrong with us, but there are some needs which are a little bit on the lines of not being able to, as a metaphor here, I mean this as a metaphor, not being able to reach your own back in the shower, so somebody else needs to scrub your back and they do it better. So sometimes it's just better to get the needs met from outside. And yes, you cannot control whether people will meet your needs. But here's the thing, there's like millions and millions of people, and okay, I'm not saying all of us know millions of people, we don't. But when we remember that the true organizer, the real need meter, if I may use that as a terrible English, but I'm just going to use that word now, is the universe. It is actually the universe that works through either ourselves or through others. Then we need to take the initiative, of course. So we're not children anymore, right? We can't walk around like little children pouting anymore. I mean, it's just not going to be acceptable behavior. However, we can take that initiative where sometimes we do need the need fulfillment to come in from outside. Sometimes our own level of the container of our self-worth has holes in it, or sometimes the level of our container of self-worth or self-esteem or whatever else it is that we need is not full enough, or it's at a very, an all-time low. And it would be great help to go out and have a group of people boost your self-esteem or your self-worth. And some people will not. Some people may even put you down, and that's where your choice comes in, because you can walk away from people like that. It's not so easy to walk away, but you can do it. And you can also take the initiative to find people who do that. So it's like, for example, even if you fulfilled your own need and you were constantly surrounded by people who were pulling you down or were abusing you, your self-esteem and your self-worth would still take a beating. So this idea that it's all coming from within just doesn't make sense. And when, as I said, you remember that it's the universe that is actually the one who truly meets our needs, and you remember that, you use your initiative to ask the universe to help you to get your needs met. And that is where your power lies. So it's not in the masochistic extent to which the new age or the self-help or the life coaching movement takes self-responsibility and choice to. It's not to that extent. You acknowledge your limitation, you acknowledge what you can and cannot do, and that is where your power is. That is the first step to getting your needs met and to live in a way that's truly fulfilling to you. Now, the second part of this video, that's part 2, I am going to talk about how to get the actual needs met. So we're going to get into a little bit more detail about that. But for now, I would just like to say that you don't have to feel disempowered because of your human limitation. You don't have to feel shame or embarrassment or guilt when you need something from another person, because a lot of the time we are so shamed for asking for our needs that we completely lose touch with our vulnerability. And I'm going to tell you that when it comes to meeting your needs, you are really going to need to embrace your vulnerability. You're really going to need a lot of courage, and you're going to need a lot of, how would you say, tearing down of the walls that you have built around your heart because you wouldn't ask for help. But the beauty of it is that it will bring you closer to the right people. So you're not going to be doing this with everyone, of course. I'm not suggesting you go stand out there naked on the road with a placard that says, anyone who can give me my deepest needs. No, that's not what I mean. And you're going to be selective about who you're going to ask. It has to be people who really are compassionate and kind and want to help you, not someone who is going to be dismissive or be nasty to you in any way. But when you find the courage to be vulnerable enough to ask for your needs to be met, that again is where your true power lies. I'm here in this beautiful city of Pune, my ex-home. I used to live here for many years, and I moved out of here recently. And tomorrow morning, I'm hoping to get into the beautiful Osho Park here and shoot my video about the second part of this the series of this video. But till then, I wish you a wonderful night. I would love to hear your comments or questions about this video, and I wish you good luck. Thank you and goodbye.